Welcome back, people. Sorry about that. We are gonna do... Yeah, we're gonna do another mission. We really gotta start leveling up our peoples. Otherwise, we're not gonna make it very far. But like I said before, with Eisenhower, he's running. Let me move this. He's trying to do his thing. Ends up getting courted by both parties to basically be the next president of the United States of America. Punch him, Cap. Good lord.
Still got some time. Tear them to shreds.
I don't think I thought this through. Anyways, Eisenhower, I mean, he was the guy. There were other contenders: Henry Cabot Lodge, William Howard Taft's son, who was aggressively non-interventionist. Yeah, why not? Look, long story short, the election of 1952, it just wasn't even a competition, people. Just wasn't. Eisenhower wins unanimously, wins his home states, Texas, etc., etc. I mean, he's just the guy. there's a lot that I'll get into when I get to his election, but ultimately wins like 450 electoral votes versus like 80. It's just not even close, really. And then honestly, the exact same thing happens in 1856 against Aldi Stevenson, just to get it out of the way, because there's a lot that that kind of goes into that. Because I mean, he's just the guy. People want this guy, you know. Let me restart this. I think I'm supposed to defeat 12, and I messed up royally. What the hell?
What are the qualifications to be a Hydra officer? I had a guess to warm body, but I think we will have solved that too. Engaging.
Where'd you learn that one?
I have a lot of things to do. Alright, but Eisenhower is the next president of the United States of America, people. This leads to a lot of unique things. Let's just say space race, international, or the intercontinental highway system that he's doing. Building jobs back up.
Still got some time. Tear them to shreds.
You brought this on yourself.
Hell yeah.
Hydra has good insurance.
So when do the rest of us get power up?
In particular, he's focused on Asia. A lot of the things that are happening that'll eventually happen, like Vietnam, are going to happen. Issues with Spain, the Middle East, yada yada yada. There's a lot of things that go on. The civil rights, racial discrimination that are happening. The issues with states in particular. It's the last turn.
Stop. Do as much as you can.
Ugh. In particular with certain states where he's going to like send in the National Guard. You know how it goes.
your grandfather back in the day, too. Target confirmed. I don't have magic healing. You're lucky I'm one of the nice ones.
Oof. Ends up having to relieve himself because of heart problems, so Nixon, his vice president, ends up taking over. Forgot about Richard Nixon. Can't forget about Nixon. His is just a cavalcade of so many things going on that they make it very interesting. I'll put it this way. Overall, his presidency is really just peace and trying to keep the peace and trying to ultimately do what is necessary to keep the peace, you know?
Them to shreds.
Here you go.
I don't do this for just anyone.
So when do the rest of us get power armor?
Sure, why not? Oh, Hydra has good insurance.
Do you have any cards that are gonna help?
This should be good.
That might help.
They won't know what hit 'em.
Still need to defeat 6 enemies.
Here's some. Ouch. Hey, thanks.
God, this is a very complicated level.
This shouldn't take long.
Wow, I'm glad you're on our side.
Ugh. I'm just gonna see what happens if I don't defeat 12 enemies. If I don't do it this turn.
Brace yourselves, people. Company's coming.
I literally can't.
No issues to report so far.
Time is almost up. Do as much as you can.
I'll do that. This is still happening.
But now I can.
Let's try this. This must happen to you all the time.
There we go. That's more like it.
That wasn't bad.
Yeah, buddy. He's also, by the way, the one of the last presidents to actually have states admitted to the Union, Hawaii and Alaska being the last two. Look, there's obviously the famous things of the military-industrial complex that he always points out too, not to mention the aggressive push towards changing of the school systems and the intellectual process that he also points out to, basically the indoctrination of kids in schools that's happening today and all that, you know, points that out. For 8 years, though, during his time as president, he leads a very relatively peaceful time as president, and it's because of him. It's because he's pushing forward towards like actual progress. He wants things to improve. He wants us to have an edge. He wants America to just be America. You know, the ideas that we look at it today, he believes in.
When will we ever learn more? But Nico is right. London might not be as social as we would like her to be.
I just want to make sure she knows that we love her.
And I think to a certain degree he understood it. You know, he tried not to use his power, in fairness to what some people might say, but he actually tries to be a steady hand for people
You must have
and for the United States, which is why he continually gets reelected again and again.
I think she's
Um,
really gonna like that.
Although low key, he actually had some issues with Social Security, but understood that, you know, it's kind of necessary. Trying to get rid of it now is a moot point. But if it was ever going to happen, hypothetically, it was going to happen during his time as president.
how relaxing it is to just zone out and watch a good movie.
Especially when he had all that power and all that influence.
You of all people deserve to rest. Happy to see you got some.
Oh, is that why you didn't bring me with you today? Because I needed to rest?
That is not what I meant.
Yeah, it was.
Why does Wanda have such a very masculine jaw?
That sounds lovely.
All right.
And ultimately, with the help of Congress, ends up expanding a bunch of the social programs that are still there here today. Whether it's Department of Health, Education, Welfare,
If they did, they would be wise to
try to be a good civil rights president. Most of his presidency is just trying to make sure we don't get into another world war internationally. Tries to keep the peace with all sorts of different countries. Meets with everyone.
thing I know for sure. It is
Um,
that frightens people. People get frightened.
Chiang Kai-shek in Taiwan.
Literally lived around the times of
The Egyptian president, forgot what his name was, Nazir. Indian prime minister, pretty much everyone that he possibly can, and ultimately just achieves relative peace. And I think a lot of people were very, very, very happy during his time, during his presidency. Obviously, you know, difficulties and whatnot that are going to be happening with the individual and interpersonal relationships with individuals. But for the most part,
There's always a story.
economically speaking, people were working. He promoted manufacturing, promoted jobs, pretty much everything that you can think of. It's pretty much just him.
We're just getting to the good part.
Are those witches actually charmed by that awful man?
Well, he is the devil. Some sort of.
Then why do they not just turn him into a toad, banish him?
Because they're good witches, Hunter. Like I hope to be one day.
Aw, Wanda and I are becoming frenzies. I should also point out too, I think he was okay with Nixon to a certain degree. I think he trusted Nixon a lot. I don't know if he really put a full force of endorsement behind Richard Nixon, which leads to the issues that happen after he leaves office.
Wanted to speak, Pharaoh?
Yeah, I just
Um,
wanted to say thanks
Thanks for what?
for surprising me with your unexpected.
He ultimately did push for a lot of Republican candidates. Post presidency, by the way. For especially 1964 with Barry Goldwater.
As exceptional and powerful as you are,
Um,
price. That price is often loneliness.
ultimately, he just wanted to retire.
Yeah, sure. I've heard that cliche a million times.
Retired on a farm in Pennsylvania, near Gettysburg, actually. And just, you know, he has some political pull every now and then that he'll try to do, but for the most part, he just
Had a group of close friends.
retires. He just wants to retire,
See?
be with Mammy.
Claire has more of a spirit than
Um,
me. I'm glad you're here, Hildur. I feel like
passes
you
away
realized how helpful
in
you were.
1968, 1969 because of congestive heart failure.
Does it not bother you that my mother was the reason why the world...
Nixon gives a great eulogy for
We
him.
all got our flaws, and my parents weren't
He's such a complicated man, Mr.
Danvers.
Dwight D. Eisenhower. All these presidents are either good or have a complicated history that leads me to believe certain things.
Something like that. All I know
Historically, I just think he didn't want to step on anyone's toes, especially the military-industrial complex. He could have had much more of a bigger backbone. But I also think that he didn't want what happened to Kennedy to happen to him, and ultimately was someone who was very strong and tried to do the best that he could within, the limitations that he had, or the powers that he had.
Hey, can I ask a favor?
Why would I do that? I'm just gonna take the key. Everyone needs to be leveled up. Like, legit everyone. So there goes Blade.
Get some fresh air. Hardly any cobwebs or ghosts out there. Practice makes perfect.
New and improved.
Timely enhancement.
Let us see it in action.
An enhanced spell. Most welcome. Awesome. Can't wait to see how this goes down. The enemy's getting stronger. We gotta do the same. Got a feeling this is gonna be useful.
There we go. Okay. I'm happy with that.
See you around.
A successful collaboration.
Yeah, buddy. I don't even know what I'm doing here.
Got more coil for me? Cross your fingers.
But he's one that I think should and will be remembered very fondly.
Definitely give you a match.
He does what he needs to do. He does everything that he does everything that you want from a president. Could be from his great religious upbringings, etc., etc. Sweet. Let's do that. Okay.
Find more coil. Send it my way.
Because I would like to create that.
This should be useful.
That's a good one.
This will do nicely.
That's also a good one. Good enough.
As requested. I'm here if you need me.
Do I need to talk to anyone else? Okay, because I want to really push forward and trying to finish this game. Son of a... Okay, let's try and do this real quick. Might as well try and level up my groups. And we can, at least start talking about one of the more historically controversial presidents, Mr. JFK.
All you have to do is take out that nest mother. Simple enough, right? Show no mercy.
Sounds like busy work. Sure, why not?
Not bad.
You might want to get that little.
Okay.
This should be good.
Nice move.
Ooh, and a card play refunded. Whale poop.
Ready up.
I know that wasn't your signature move.
One more time.
Okay, well, anyways, let's talk about him. John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Excuse me. Long line of Kennedys that stretch really for most of American history in a lot of ways. A unique president, one of the youngest men ever to actually ascend to the presidency itself. Family lifelong Democrats. They're in the news nowadays because John Kennedy's nephew, son of Robert Kennedy Jr., is running for president as an independent, breaking away from the Democratic Party.
Sure I can't change your mind?
Let's begin. Just what this battle requires.
You should have known that.
Don't know what to do. And a president during a very contentious time in the history of this country. And like I said, very long line of the Kennedy families. Born in Massachusetts in 1917, near the tail end of World War One. His father is Joseph Kennedy, a businessman, politician, yada yada. And they had a lot of power in that state. They were like the new family, new party that was, or the not the new party, but the new group that was forming around that particular point in time in that state.
I hope you're ready for this. Take this. Which arm are you guys again? Arm B, B team, third string?
What are you gonna do, Strange? I'll risk it.
I fully intend to make this as miserable as possible for you, fair warning.
They're moving on me.
Now John was the second son. He had an older brother named Joseph who was, if I'm gonna be honest, he was supposed to be the guy, the Kennedy. Historically, instead of John. John always played second fiddle to him along with his younger brothers as well. But Joseph was supposed to be the guy. I think he ends up dying in the war. Very complicated family that the Kennedys are, I'll put it that way. But he grew up in Massachusetts.
We've done it.
His father wasn't there a lot, but was very strong in their lives. Wanted them to be ambitious, quote unquote. Meant running for, political parties, etc., in Congress, yada yada. He had high hopes for his children, I'll put it that way. Also Catholic. He went to Catholic school, but he got sick one day, ended up needing an appendectomy, I believe.
We got Wanda back, straightened out Johnny Blaze, and are gonna totally be
And John in particular had a lot of health problems throughout his life that would later be revealed. A lot of back problems too. Might want to point that out as well. Okay, gotta go out. Gotta go talk to peoples. And when I mean very sickly, man, I mean he had a bunch of problems.
Hey, can I ask a favor?
Craft a rare ability. Okay, probably. Yeah, I'm just not gonna do that. A lot of gastrointestinal problems too. Appreciate Crohn's, but I'm not 100% positive. Once Kennedy's around 18, 19 years old. Grew up very wealthy, by the way. I mean, he had a trust fund as a kid. Grew up in a strict Catholic household. He would later attend Harvard University. Played football. Pretty much everything you could think of. He was just the quintessential frat boy.
Don't get tripped on now. How does the sentence flow?
And then he traveled with him, with his father, his older brother Joseph, to embassies all across the world once he graduated. London in particular, where they were pretty close at. And mainly because his father worked with FDR around that time as an ambassador.
Humanoid chickens that shoot fire from their mouths.
Would not have imagined fire-breathing chickens.
They were created by the Deathwalkers and sent to kill me. The Deathwalkers.
Little tidbit, while traveling all across Europe, the day he comes back to London was September 1st, 1939, the day that Germany invades Poland, where World War II begins.
My imagination is most definitely engaged.
Ends up coming back home afterwards. Goes back to school. Learns more about political philosophy, business, etc., etc. Writes a bunch of books, or begins writing a bunch of books around this particular point in time. Later enrolls in Stanford for business. Although he doesn't complete his studies at Stanford, he ends up leaving because his father wants to write a bunch of books, and he's trying to help his father write his books too. A lot of writing this guy does at a young age, you know. And of course, he has the reputation now at this point, being a bit of a charmer. You know how he goes and how he is. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
My lucky day.
Ready for more?
Constant innovation. That's the stark promise.
When do we get the Hulk?
Later.
I want the Hulk. Give me the Hulk. Here we go. Once he helps his dad write his memoirs, he tries to go to Yale. Ends up seeing, along with his father, that America will be intervening in World War II. And at 23 years old, he ends up trying to join the Navy. Trying to go into Army's, he tries to join initially the Army and tries to get into OCS, Officers Candidate School. But was disqualified because of the chronic back problems that he had and the gastrointestinal issues. So then he ends up joining the Navy with his help from his father, and joins the Naval Reserves, actually.
I do not think Blaze feels much of anything.
What do you mean something is up with Limbo? More soulless? A little more detail would be appreciated.
It's all the detail I can give. But
Does end up fighting, goes on to the eastern, or not the eastern, but the Pacific Front, fighting the Japanese. Gets into some combat. Torpedoes fired at him and his convoys. Spots destroyers. They fight back left and right.
Plays out, but don't agree to anything.
One of his ships that he was in command of gets cut in half, basically, by one of the big destroyers.
Don't look at me like that, Rox. Time for the story to end. One way or another.
They end up escaping to a nearby island, saves a bunch of men,
And your crew. Good. Because I got us a plan.
and ends up being rescued along with like 100 crew members later, like a week later. This got a lot of national attention, which kind of made him a bit of not a war hero, but positive light, where he saved a bunch of men's lives. Ends up helping him in the future. Comes back to duty, Then there's like issues with his back that's getting really, really bad. His older brother ends up dying. He was a pilot, ends up dying on an air mission. And then ends up basically doing something really stupid. I forgot what he did. He re-injured his back doing a ship, ends up like capsizing a ship, something like that. And then he just ends up retiring from once the war's basically over. He ends up leaving in April of 1945. And then as soon as he comes home, his dad's like, "All right, you're the guy now. The oldest son's dead, so you need to." Oh, Mephisto. Sorry, I gotta focus on Kennedy before I forget it. Ends up getting a job working with William Randolph Hearst, actually, the great newspaper mogul of his time and era, and attempts to try to work as a journalist.
Midnight sun, the better. This place is further as it gets.
So, what? You dump him off in hell with the freaking devil?
Limbo with Mephisto.
There's a difference.
You do realize I can hear everything.
Bastard must come on back less than we do. Count on that.
Coward. You two deserve each other.
Hate me all you want when we get home, kid, but it's the only option.
I'm not going anywhere with you.
He's got a point, Johnny. Our arrangement was for you.
Don't get cute with me, you pig.
Oh, I'd love to see the look on his face when he gets back. But first things first. Let's see if you're worth all the fuss, shall we?
Oof. Things getting spicy. So long story short, journalism doesn't go as well as he thought. It's a lot harder. Oh God.
I hope you don't mind that digression. I promise it won't be any worse than what Lilith had planned. And here we are. Here you are, child.
That is not what I wanted, but I'll take it.
Your time will come, right? But today, my interests lie elsewhere.
Fires of hell burn bright.
Let us see if they have an answer for this.
Come on, give me something. But journalism doesn't really work out for him too much. Not to mention his family really wants him to join and become a politician.
It's your time.
So he runs for congressional house. Despite it being a Republican year, he ends up winning. He ends up winning the seat, and then basically just becomes a congressman for the next 6 years, which I think around this particular point in time, mind you, famously, in the movie, Oppenheimer, he was one of the deciding votes to not get Robert Downey Jr.'s character into the specific cabinet position. Lord. Well, I hope that's enough.
Strikes ring hollow.
Take advantage where they focus.
Show no mercy.
No one else can.
I know, but don't believe your eyes.
Yeah, buddy.
As losing something. Only the innocent. Has chosen.
Max HP increased.
You bring judgment upon yourself.
Okay, I'm just gonna have to deal with it.
Vengeance fears no one.
Now Kennedy, he's just a fire starter of a politician. I'll just put it that way. He does whatever his family really wants him to do, you know, for the most part. But generally speaking, he's just doing what ultimately he thinks is right.
I've encountered all sorts of unusual beings through the ages, but you, your words are meaningless to me. They'll come to understand me in time. They always do.
Feel my call. The light will heal you.
There we go. I mean, imagine he's young, he's good looking, he's smart. I mean, you're talking about someone who's going to be, who's thinking about a bunch of different things right now. One of those things is him potentially becoming president, but more immediately a governor. So by the time the 1950s hit around, keep in mind, I don't even think he's like in his 40s yet. He ends up seriously thinking about a run for the governorship. Ultimately decides against that for numerous reasons, but numerous reasons, but ultimately it's because he was he thought that the governorship didn't have a lot of power in it. And thought that being maybe a senator might actually be a big step forward. And I do apologize. It's he does the whole cabinet thing during his time as a senator. And it was a big deal too because he ends up beating Henry Cabot Lodge, who at that point had probably won 3 consecutive contests in a row at senator. Like dude was a mainstay.
Some for the rest of us.
Heal you up. This was probably unnecessary, but do have Fortify, and I'm hoping that they just don't attack Ghost Rider too badly. That worked out in my favor. Kinda. The biggest problem with Ghost Rider is just all his attacks deal so much damage to himself. It's just not even fair. Ugh, okay, well, that's really all I can do. Two and two, okay. I can deal with that. As my dogs keep barking like crazy. Basically, Kennedy beats Henry Cabot Lodge, definitively. And his time as senator is all over the place. A lot of it had to do with some health problems he's dealing with. Ends up getting a bunch of surgeries for his back, his stomach. I mean, like, he was not a healthy man, unfortunately, which led to at one point, basically, he was going to be read his last rites because they thought that one of his last operations he wasn't going to make it through.
Already your efforts send shockwaves across the multiverse, Hunter. Your mother will be so proud.
I am just getting started.
Good. So am I.
Usurper! You forget. You are not the ruler of Limbo. I am.
Indiana. Nicely done.
At this point, too, he had met Jacqueline Lee,
From my parents.
who would be his wife. Natalie Portman portrays her in that Jackie movie. They got married sometime in 1953. Had a couple issues with kids, unfortunately. Had one miscarriage, one of their daughters, or one of the children had died at birth.
Leave now. Mephisto and I have some catching up to do.
A minor inconvenience.
John F. Kennedy Jr. was born, though. Soon after. He would die in a plane crash famously, although, let's be honest, Hillary Clinton probably had something to do with it because he was running for her seat that she would eventually win in New York. That's a whole mess that I don't even want to get into.
The page. He carries the page. Retrieve it for me.
But one thing that endeared Kennedy to the people of Massachusetts, why he won so decisively, routinely, was because of just his sheer love and care for the people of Massachusetts. He actually listened to them, did what they wanted to do. This led to his increased rise in popularity, not only in America, but not only Massachusetts, but America as well. So much so that he ends up getting the nomination for the presidency in 1960. Now, it's not like he didn't have a lot of support. He had an immense amount of support, but a lot of people were wary about his age, his ability to be able to actually handle the difficulties of the job due to his, let's say, difficult health. Let's heal my boy here.
Behold the light's gift.
I feel more like myself every day.
Hit you there. Take that one out.
Even the gods would not stand before us as arrogantly as you do.
Another forceful knockback.
Once again, will its servants fall.
Taunt me. Oh. Taunt me, fam.
Blade told me to mention your mother. Terrible. The advantage is mine.
A reputation precedes
And of course, during the lead up to his actual eventual election, was the televised one of the first debates ever between the Republican and Democratic leaders and nominees. This got really bad. Kinda. Ugh. So Nixon and Kennedy do their live televised broadcast on TV.
Still they persist. My mother will sacrifice any and all of her children to achieve her goals.
Hello, sir.
Not gonna be enough. This is where it only benefited Kennedy, honestly.
It's not being on the receiving end of your wrath.
to use some strategery here.
Very effective.
Probably should use my redraws, but whatever. People always point out Kennedy won it if you saw it on live television. Nixon won it if you just listened to it on the radio. It's a whole thing. Regardless, people just like what they see, and I think that's a fair point, you know. And he showed, at the very least, he wasn't afraid to answer questions, the calm poise, and Nixon just wasn't, though. Nixon's a whole other beast, to be honest with you, and one that, you know, let's just say it's very complicated. So then the election happens. Let's just be honest, with LBJ as Kennedy's vice president, a bunch of shenanigans go on with election stealing and stuff like that. LBJ was famous for that, which, let's just... LBJ's not a good man. And then Kennedy himself, also probably not the most upfront about certain election integrity things that go on around that particular point in time. Ugh, I'm just getting my butt handed to me right now. Starting to think I probably should have chosen like Doctor Strange or Cap. Actually, I couldn't. Never mind. Where the hell's Magic at? Oh. Second. Now this was a hotly contested election. Might as well. God, there's really no good place to put this. Yeah, what the hell. I mean, it's split 50-50 down the middle. Kennedy wins 300 electoral votes versus Nixon's 220-ish. And keep in mind, too, that when I mean a lot of shenanigans are going on, there's like 3 or 4 contested states that actually don't solidify their election effectively, that ultimately end up going to Kennedy. All of them go to Kennedy, which would have actually, had Nixon won those, he would have won, very contested, but would have won the election. So I do want to just point that out. To this day, it is one of the most highly contested elections in the history of this country. Of course.
My servants join the fray.
Okay, what can I do? Okay, well, I can drain the soul of a lot of these enemies.
You would do well to focus on the nest. Your allies are only going to wear you down. None will be spared.
So I don't have to worry about health too much for him. Never mind. Oh, you've got to be freaking kidding me. Dude, this game doesn't like me, I swear.
It was your time.
Come on, just give me something. I'll take it. This is not good, people.
Only the innocent are spared.
Well, the bright side is it's probably just gonna be, yep, just gonna be going straight to him. I don't think I have any downs yet, so that's probably gonna be good.
We have to aid them if we can.
Bound, I'm guessing. Oh, this is some BS. I literally can't do anything. I literally can't do anything. Okay, I have to restart this encounter because this is getting really stupid now. Now, is it going to restart it all the way from the beginning, though? No. Okay. This is gonna be a very long part.
The light will heal you.
Now this game's just trying to get on my nerves.
They're not willing to accept defeat.
I was hoping I would finish talking about the election and then end this part, but might as well just talk about his presidency then.
No more wasted time.
For my retaliation.
One thing that is very different with Kennedy versus his eventual successors and predecessors is that he's very quick. You're not going to change his mind immediately. He's very quick to choose, quick to judge, yada yada. Some good, some bad, let's be honest. God, they're not giving me any cards. Where can I even hell ride at? How far back does this go?
My mother will sacrifice any and all of her children to achieve her goals.
Okay. Immediately when he comes in, he and just this fucking game. I swear, I'm gonna just break this game at this point. This is just becoming absolutely unnecessarily tedious.
It's all coming back to me. The light will heal you.
Most people know about Kennedy's foreign policy, mutually assured destruction, decolonization of the world for the most part. In particular with Africa. He also started the Peace Corps, mind you. More issues with the Berlin Wall, yada yada, which leads to more issues with Russia, Bay of Pigs invasion with Cuba, yada yada. Everyone knows that. Kennedy, unfortunately, it has to be noted that despite Kennedy being the one to ultimately win in that particular counter, he was, I don't want to say the aggressor. It was Nikita Khrushchev who was the one who was like, hey, maybe we shouldn't blow each other up to smithereens, you know? and he was very antagonistic towards the previous administration, the Eisenhower administration, which I always find deeply fascinating.
My mother will sacrifice any and all of her children to achieve her goals.
What do I do? What do I do? We'll probably do this. Oh, keep exploding. Just keep going for it. He has his hands in everything. Laos, Vietnam, the communist revolutions that are happening around there. Things that are going on with the Middle East, mainly obviously with oil. A lot of the interventions that are happening overseas are overseen by his administration, although in fairness to him, he's one of the few people that's like, I don't think this is the way we should be doing this, going against the military industrial complex. So I think this is where it really begins with, you know, how much power does a president have instead of the actual bureaucratic state and other financial, you know, monetary concessions have to be made.
Then send them back to Lilith in ashes.
One more explosion. I will take it. I will definitely and happily take that. Does anyone need health? Now, I think I can do the hell ride now.
Not shaking their confidence.
Now, federally speaking, or homebound speaking and domestically speaking, he does a bunch of housing acts, increases the minimum wage, provides more money for yada yada. This actually helps people. I think by today's standards, he's a slightly moderate, conservative, and socially liberal president in a lot of ways. And, I mean, he's like, we're going to implement all these things that are going to help spur the economy and also cut taxes.
I can already feel that page twisting inside me.
And largely, it actually worked. It helped in a lot of ways.
Blaze. I led you straight to him.
Because Eisenhower's administration, the economy had dipped a little bit near the end of his term. GDP started soaring under Kennedy's administration. It's also helped with weapons production, etc., but for the most part, his presidency should be seen as a positive look at what was actually happening. Not to mention, too, the first Catholic as a president should also be granted as well. NASA, etc. And then, of course, the famed assassination. Oh, can't forget about him cheating and doing all the... because he was a serial cheater. Let's just be honest about that as well. A very complicated man. He's a man... there's no one like Kennedy. A womanizer who's very hot-headed, very stern in his beliefs, and also at the very same end of the spectrum, like anti-globalist. And at the very least... antagonistic to many globalist beliefs and a believer in the ideas of America and the American dream. A very complicated man. That's kind of the only way I think you can really look at him, in all honesty. And I think it wasn't just his speeches and his antagonism towards
I am sorry.
the military-industrial complex. I just think he was being a little bit out of control on top of everything, and quite literally was someone who
If there is something you need to get off your chest,
the powers that be could not sufficiently control. I just think that's the truth. That's just who he was and just who he is, which leads to his eventual assassination in Dallas, Texas,
Robbie,
where declassified documents largely show, hey, you know what? The government kind of had a handling in it, basically, in his assassination, whether it is outright killing him or not stopping him, or just they had a hand in it. They were hiding a bunch of stuff. A lot of these documents show, at the very least, that it was probably more than one shooter, and that the CIA, FBI, they knew about it. They knew about it, and they probably had a hand in it, which is a big reason why a lot of these documents, and they try to blame Russia and Russian assets, yada yada, and all that information is real finicky to say that it was, but they were obviously the big power, powers at the time, and had a lot of influence at that time, and the KGB, yada yada. Our government likely did the deed, unfortunately.
She's all yours. Come sit, Hunter. I can tell.
How is Kennedy remembered? Very, very fondly in a lot of ways, also negatively in a lot of ways. I also think recently he's looked at very negatively, really for no specific reasons other than just today's modern lens looked at it in this particular light, and that's really not fair, and above all else really just this just doesn't look good, I'll put it that way. And I think it's more so because of his womanizing ways that lead a lot of people to look at him negatively, which that is fair, but everything else I'd probably argue is at the very least debatable. He wasn't a good president, wasn't a bad president. I don't even think he was a good man, but I also think that he wasn't going to sufficiently... He's the kind of person that's like, look, man, if you want to be corrupt, that's one thing, but if you want to destroy the world and the country, for your own financial gains and needs, then yeah, I'm not about that. And that at the very least is something that I do have to give him some props on, that he ultimately ended up giving his life to do that. Not intentionally, of course, but yeah. We're going to talk to the rest of these people, and then we're going to end this part, because I think this has been going on for about well over an hour at this point. And I'm a busy guy, and I got some errands to run. So I'll talk to Agatha. Actually, praise Charlie. Woof, woof. And then when we come back, though, we're going to talk about my third least favorite president, Mr. LBJ. It goes basically Wilson, FDR, LBJ are three of the most just truly evil people to ever become president. Whether for just narcissistic and entitled and just very narrow worldviews, or just corruption and power overtook them, and corruption and power is literally just LBJ in a nutshell. He absolutely was all about that corruption. He was all about that power. I'll get to that in a little bit, but he's just not a good president. And the fact that he's looked on even remotely fondly, I think, shows how much we're either lied to about our presidents and our historical figures, or really just how we value things as people and as individuals. That he's even ranked remotely high, I think, is dubious. It's not good. If you wanted an honest interpretation of the historical legacy of Lyndon Baines Johnson, it will not be a positive one, and it should never be a positive one. It should be looked on incredibly negatively, and should be looked on with much disdain in every sense of the word. And anyone trying to argue that, in my personal view, how? I want you to explain to me how. Because he's not a good man. He's not a good man. He was a bully. He was ruthless. And he probably is a big reason why Kennedy ends up getting assassinated and murdered. Because keep in mind, Kennedy was going to dump LBJ as his vice president in the re-election bid. The only reason why he ended up getting the nomination to be his vice president was because there's this thought in elections that your vice president actually has a big hand in helping you secure a certain state. Not the case, because Kennedy was going to win Texas regardless, but yeah, that was the reason why he was the vice presidential ticket. Anyways, God bless, like and subscribe. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Keep it up, and like and subscribe again, as I just said. Yeah, if you have any tips and tricks on how to improve this, you let me know. Otherwise, peace.